everyone, and welcome to today's internal digital comms session. I hope you've all been enjoying the event so far, and you've all hopefully made a little bit of time to pop into our virtual booth to meet our colleague Dimitri. If you haven't, please go in and pop in and see Dimitri after this session. He'll be back in the virtual booth to answer any questions you have, and obviously to run through a little bit more about what Staffbase does. So my name is Jess. I'm one of the marketing managers here at Staffbase, and I'm going to be today's moderator. However, before we get started, I just want to ensure that everyone gets as much as possible from today's session. So firstly, all rest assured, this session is actually being recorded. So if you want to go back and rewatch anything, the session will be posted onto the GEE YouTube channel, I believe, from tomorrow. And then you'll also get an email link to it as well. So make sure that you do watch out for that if you do want to go back and see any other questions that we do point out or rewatch any of it. So I'll also be here during the webinar to make sure that we keep on time. Obviously, we all do love having a chat. So I'll be timekeeper, so you guys can totally sit back and relax and don't need to worry about that. And as we've put into the chat box already, please ask questions throughout. I'll be keeping an eye on that. We do want to make sure that we do answer as many questions as possible. And then towards the end of the session, we really want to be able to open up the mic to all the attendees so that you guys can join us on stage and ask us any more questions. And one little bit more of housekeeping, if you are struggling to see the presentation, if you double click on it, it'll actually make it larger, so you'll be able to see everything on the screen. Perfect. So let me just take a moment to introduce myself and the rest of the panel here today. As I said, my name is Jess Lang and I'm one of the marketing managers here at Staffbase. I work alongside a team of extremely passionate people who work together every day to boost employee engagement and to help organizations communicate with their employees in a more direct and meaningful way. Also joining us from Staffbase is Frank Wolf. So Frank is our co-founder and president. He's really passionate about internal communications and is an extremely inspirational person who's always seeking out ways to promote an enjoyable workplace. And I can confidently say he's done that here at Staffbase. I'm not just saying that because he's on this webinar. And then also joining us is Chris Nicholls from Sunbelt Rentals. Hi, Chris. Hi. So Chris is a CIM qualified marketing and communications manager with nearly 20 years of marketing experience across B2B, B2C, the public sector and international environments. So Chris currently works for Sunbelt Rentals in the UK as the National Communications Manager and is responsible for internal and external corporate comms. Chris has worked on quite a huge rebrand for the project and has recently unified 20 plus separate businesses under one new umbrella and delivered a completely brand new vision, mission and value to the entire workforce. So some pretty impressive stuff there from Chris, and I can confidently say we're super excited to have him part of this panel because we know he's going to bring a wealth of knowledge.
Thank you for inviting me on.
It's okay, it's great to have you here. As you guys can all see, we have a really exciting and jam-packed agenda for today's session. So we're obviously focusing on transforming the employee experience from employee app to intranet. So the first topic we're going to be discussing is how Sunbelt Rentals transformed 20 plus brands into one with the help of an employee app. We'll then move on to discuss dealing with COVID-19 and helping employees understand their work to keep the economy running. The third topic we'll be discussing is some concrete ideas for transforming content to be more relevant and engaging. And then last of all, we'll be talking about transforming the employee app to an intranet, best practices, why and how. So as I said, pretty exciting stuff that we do have for today's session. So I'm going to pass over to Frank, who will be leading the conversation with Chris and be able to go into more detail as we've discussed.
Fantastic. Thanks. I think, yeah, let's start right away. And Chris, would be great to learn a bit more about your business, and especially like the 20-to-1 challenge that you guys have.
Yeah. Okay, yes. Well, I'll probably first thing to say the last, 10, 12 months has been a pretty crazy year for us. And that's not thinking about the last few months of dealing with the pandemic, which I'm sure everyone on this call has had to deal with in some capacity or other. But as Jessica said, we've just done a massive rebrand process which we actually launched at a national conference at the start of March. So just before the pandemic really gripped hold of us in the UK, we got 800 of our people, which doesn't sound like the greatest idea now, in one room on the 4th of March to launch our brand. And what we've done is we'd spent probably since autumn of last year looking at rebranding 20 of our businesses into one, with a view to launch that on the 1st of May this year. Now, we didn't quite succeed, and we actually moved it back a month to the 1st of June, just because there was so much going on with the pandemic. We decided to move it back. So that's a little bit about what we've done, but I guess most people have never heard of Sunbelt Rentals or who we are and what we do. Well, we're actually part of Ashtead Group, which is the top performing company on the FTSE 100 for the last 10 years. And we're the second biggest rental company in the world. So we're a big organization, but primarily over in the North America. So we have USA and Canada, which make up about 90% of the overall business. But here in the UK, we have operations in UK, Ireland, and Germany. And we provide everything from diggers, dumpers. I think, Jessica, there is another slide if you can just pop it onto that one. So it gives a bit of a range of what we do. Diggers, dumpers, generators, hoists, lifting equipment, survey equipment. We practically serve every market and sector. You'll see our stuff on HS2 as that's being built. There's the Hinkley Point nuclear power station down in the southwest. We're there. Every motorway roadworks that you get stuck in probably has our equipment on truck capacity. Every railway upgrade, we're on there. Every flooring and the fencing, the trackway and the fencing, which you saw or didn't see at Glastonbury this weekend because it wasn't on, would have been ours. So we touched so many different areas. And probably more recently, if you've been watching the news, you'll have seen the NHS test centres, those drive-through test centres. There's about 90 of them now, and I think we have provided all the equipment for all of those bar 2. So we've been in the news quite a bit recently. As a business, we've got 3,700 staff there or thereabouts across 200 locations. So, and that said, mainly the UK, but we have a couple in Ireland and a couple in Germany as well. So that's a bit about who we are.
So Chris, the understanding is that the 20 businesses that you brought together over time, the main strategy is to say, be exactly that provider where the NHS can say, I don't just give me that tent. I want the whole test center. I want everything from one provider. So that's pretty much, I think, is that correct? So that's exactly the differentiation, correct?
It certainly is. It's what we feel should give us a competitive advantage against our competition, because rather than having for example, Deloitte, who are running the test centers, they don't have to go to A, B, C, and D to go and get their equipment. They can just get it from one source, and we can project manage the whole thing. So in theory, it should make life a lot easier for customers, especially on large scale projects like that.
Absolutely. So why did you probably you decided to have a better comms platform or solution based on the whole like integration of these companies, like at least from the outside? If you go, I think we have one slide here that's coming from a survey that we did. I think if you go to the next slide, a survey that we did like in the last 2 months across Europe about challenges of communication and internal communication, and what are their main goals and topics that they run through. If you are looking at these, especially like creating understanding for the goals, strategies, communicating the values and so on, would that fit to kind of also your challenges that you had?
It will really, and it does. I'll probably start by saying I've been looking after the comms process probably from end of November, December last year, when we actually launched our app, which we called Interaction, in September of last year. It took about 6 months to develop. And the main reason why, or the main 2 reasons why we needed the app was probably in parallel with, like you're saying, of how we needed to rebrand the business. Over the last 6-7 years, we'd grown organically, but we'd also acquired about a dozen or so businesses, specialist businesses, complementary businesses to our offering already, and we kind of bolted them on. But we never, probably for 90% of the time, 90% of those businesses, we never rebranded them. We kept their name, we kept their specialism, which was great for some, you know, it brought them into the business, they understood what they did, but it probably wasn't the greatest for a collaboration point of view, and certainly not from a communication point of view. Because those businesses that we bought never perhaps fully understood what, at the time, A-Plant was and our mission and values. So that didn't quite work properly, and it was problematic. And it was definitely felt it was not only confusing for our customers because they couldn't understand the full range of what we offered, it was also confusing for our staff because they were sort of, the businesses or divisions, as we even called them then, were working in silos. They didn't necessarily collaborate enough between them. And this was emphasized. I mean, we ran an employee engagement survey last year, and the feedback was clear. People didn't understand what the business stood for, which was, from a comms point of view, that kind of set a challenge. If our people don't know what we stand for, then we need to change and review how we are communicating to them. Otherwise, we are never going to get our message forward, and we're never going to improve that much of a business if our own people don't know. And probably going back to a previous culture, what was also quite shocking about the survey that we did was that more than half of the people didn't think anything would happen on the back of the survey. So that perhaps shows either a lack of engagement or we hadn't communicated properly with them. And I think I can sit here now and say they were probably right, but they were also wrong, because on the back of that survey, we have rebranded the business. We have brought those 20 businesses into one. We've brought a new mission, a new vision and values, which is communicated. We've brought in new loyalty schemes, award schemes, and of course, we've brought in the app to help communicate with people. Because certainly before, we didn't have a central point for communicating with employees. Our intranet platform that we had and still have was kind of clunky and outdated. And even some of the businesses that we acquired to get up to 20 brands, well, they couldn't even access the intranet. So you can see that we didn't have like an effective single source of the truth to communicate to our staff. So I think like the need for something better was very obvious.
Yeah, I think actually I hear myself a bit weird. Is this just myself, or
I think
can you hear me
Jessica's
fine?
frozen on my screen.
Oh, okay. Okay, so yeah, let's just. That's
Got a little bit cut out there. I'm back now.
okay. I would say let's just continue, Jessica. Okay. If you hear us, you seem to be frozen. So what you just said is you didn't just launch a comms solution, but you did a big initiative based on the feedback that you had in terms of how you communicate, how you brand the business, how the values need to change. So that's correct, and I think that's a best practices we see in many other like companies and customers saying technology is not everything. It's not just about the technology, but the technology is actually the channel to communicate the good news and the changing values. Correct?
Yeah, I think it is, and it's just helped because what we've done and what we've delivered, so much of it is based on our own people's feedback. So it's there and it's open for everyone to see that, you know, people have a voice, and if we use it and we research it properly and we get that information, we can form a better business and we can grow as a better business.
Perfect. Yeah, I would suggest let's have a look at some examples how you actually did that with the app. So the app itself, it's how was it called? It's Interaction.
Interaction, yes. So
and it's
Interaction was we actually have a printed staff magazine, a biannual magazine, and that was called Interaction. So to keep on brand with it, we use that name for it. So then, yeah, you can see on the screen that is the app there. Now, I guess it's fair to say it sounds all quite smooth and quite obvious, but it didn't. When we launched the app, we did have a few problems, and it wasn't as smooth as we would have liked. And probably we were guilty that our comms didn't necessarily change that much when we launched the app. We were still perhaps living in and working how we did before. We didn't really have a dedicated resource or person or people to look after the app and drive new content. We just kind of put out the same content as before, but on a new channel. So I don't think we got that properly correct, which was a bit of a shame, really, because we actually delivered an amazing plan to launch it. We mail shotted everyone's home address with a personalized piece about their job and what information they could find out on the app. We got employee champions from across the business to look at it and promote it. We had it on every meeting agenda. So short of physically going around to every person and installing it on their phone, or on their computer, we felt like we got the message out there. But sadly, we only got about 25% take up. And I think that probably stems back to some of the skepticism I was talking about before, and the silos and the old comms process that we had. People saw Interaction originally as the mother brand, the A-Plant brand, which it was called before. And I don't think they were that interested in what it had to say, because they were still too busy looking after their own areas. So I think we weren't a joined up team. Plus, we had some IT problems with, we also launched a single sign-on system called Opta at the same time. And although the system's really good once you're in it, it was quite confusing to log in. So that caused us a few problems. But, that setback aside, we did start to adapt what we've done. And from a marketing and audience point of view, I feel like I should be clear that Interaction was and is just light years ahead of what our internal comms looked like before. It just looks so much smarter. I think in the past, you'd say that we broadcast news without enough thought on how the reader would react. It was just a matter of fact. It was just quite corporate. Whereas now, our primary motive of when we distribute news is that we're seeking engagement with our employees. So, Jessica, I think you might have an example of a couple of the one slide on there.
I think, yeah, might be the next slide.
This one, yeah. So I don't know if you can see it on there, everyone, but the sort of the, let's go back one slide, sorry, Jessica. Is it one back? Yeah, that one there, yeah. Got it there, that's fine. The one that you can see probably on the left of your screen was it's a typical example of how we would send something out in the old world and in our new world on the internet. Then the middle and to the right of your screen with all the colour and the images is something that we send out now. It's so much more appealing. We're using videos on there as well. We're using teaser messages, and we're getting feedback back. We're getting feedback from our people of what they think about it. The content so much more relevant to their jobs. And I don't think before the delivery of the comms wasn't really wasn't a priority. It was just a case of getting that news out for people to read, and if they read it or not, there was no real measurement, or that wasn't factored in. Whereas now we're doing it this way, and because of the two-way process of it, because of the engagement, we're seeing what people think, and the more that people engage with it, the more the demand increases for people to post on Interaction as well, because they're getting immediate feedback. What's the feeling on policies, news, and then we can adapt what we're publishing accordingly.
Perfect. I think you had another example. I think this was on the next slide about reacting to feedback, correct?
Yeah, I mean, this is a perfect example. And in fact, this is, we can see how relevant this is, or how.
What's the story behind that?
So we put a post out there. We launched a new procedure called Logistic, which is an app for drivers to help them with the delivery. It maps out their route for the day. It removes paperwork. Everything's automatic. Makes their life a lot easier in theory. But obviously, as you know, whenever you introduce a new way of working, there's always going to be teething problems. But what we've done is the owner of this project has been regularly communicating via the app. This is where we're at. The trial has started in the Northwest. We're doing this, this, and this. This is how many locations we've done. This is how we're getting on with it. And that's been there for the whole business to see. And that wouldn't have been there before. Would not have been there before. So people can see all the positive steps that we're doing. And they can also say from using it if they have any issues. And this is a good example from Ben, one of our drivers, that he posted a constructive criticism on David's post. And then David phoned him. And then you can see on there that he said he was shocked to get his phone call, and how good it was to get that phone call from someone in charge of the operation. And he actually made that message to our CEO, Andy Wright. And then Andy responded back to him. So all of a sudden you've got a driver speaking to the CEO, which, that's how it should be. That's how the process is. And I think, I've seen comments before from Ben on Interaction, and he's probably one of the more cynical of our people out there. And I think, the whole way the app is communicating is changing that mentality. People are no longer seen as, just a driver, just a fitter, just a salesperson, just a manager. We're all teammates, we all work together, and we all improve it. And I think being able to see the engagement like this it's really satisfying, really satisfying.
I can, like, if you read this, right, like, thanks Ben, this is exactly the business we want to build. Like, you can do a lot of posts about values and the culture and blah blah blah. This is pure culture creation, right? So that's how can this be more authentic?
We've talked about it. We've talked about our values. We've talked about being teammates. We've talked about being responsible. These are all in our values, but this is it living. This is exactly how it should be. And if we all work in that way, then we will reach our vision and our mission. So it's fantastic for us to see.
Because we have Andy here, who's the CEO, how have you been able to measure or show your success? I mean, for Andy, probably it's fantastic to have these individual things, right? So, say these stories.
I mean, it is. I mean, I can give you examples. Just before lockdown started, after we'd launched, Andy was on a quick break in Tenerife, and we were still communicating with each other. We put some posts out there, and I know he was sat on his sun lounger reading all the positive responses that were coming in. So because we were messaging, and he was seeing the response to what we put out there, which was fascinating. But it's good engagement. But from the stats on what we post now, I can see and we can see what resonates with our employees. So I can report back to the business and say that maybe this post that we want to put out shouldn't be done in this way. Maybe we need to tackle it from another angle. We need to think about it more from what the audience want. What are they going to get out of it before we post? So it's great having that ability to say, well, we should put this one out with a push notification, and it should be done from this angle, because ultimately we want the person to change their behavior. We want the audience to change their behavior from this comms. And if we're not really engaging with them, that's not going to happen. And I suppose, I don't know whether anyone else can think about this from their organization's point of view as well, but typically from an IT side or from an operations point of view, comms in the past would just go out and it'd be so matter of fact. It would just be, we're changing this on that date, please updo this, rather than saying that we are looking to introduce this new system because it's going to give you, the audience, the user, the benefit of being able to do this, 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 and this. And because we've started to change that way, I think, again, it's just changing our culture to be a more inclusive, collaborative business.
Absolutely.
And also from that, I suppose it's fair to say that the numbers on the app are going up as well. So at the moment, we're not massively promoting it, but I think the numbers are going up by 12, 13, 14, 15 every day, because I think people are buying into it and they're telling people, have you seen this on the app? Because the numbers are just going up. So word is getting out.
That's what we see. And I think Corona itself as a crisis has created or put comms much more in the center of the business. Has all sort of digital comms channels that we've seen have a huge boost in usage, users logging in, active usage, and so on. I think that's probably also the same that you have seen, correct?
I mean, it is, yeah. I mean, we've had, let's be honest, the coronavirus has been a nightmare, but it's also been a sort of a shot in the arm for internal comms, because all of a sudden we've had a demand for huge amounts of content and a willing audience that want and need to know what's going on within our business. And like without getting too political, from a personal point of view, I'd never be one to praise the Tory government that we have in the UK, and I'm not sure they know what they're doing from their left hand to their right. But their daily briefings that they did at 5 o'clock every single day, I think that whether you liked what they said or whether you thought it was relevant what they said, it also created a demand, an expectation from everyone to have more communications. And that's what we did. Now, people especially during the early weeks, first 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks of the crisis, our people could hear the updates on our policies and procedures, because they were changing, every few days they were changing in line with government regulations, and they could hear them first on the app. And it wasn't just a case of like, here's 2 paragraphs of text of what you need to do. We were getting our leaders recorded and they were broadcasting that on video, so we could see the whites of the eyes and what it meant to people and how it was impacting them. And from that as well, because we were posting it like that, we got immediate feedback. We could see, do they understand or like that policy or procedure? And I suppose it could be a case of saying that, what more could we do to help them? What have we missed? We don't always know what goes on at every single operational level, but we could start to see what we were missing in our comms, what we were missing in our policies. And I think that giving our guys the opportunity to respond to us really helped with engagement. I mean, I suppose you could say that the pandemic's, it's really helped out showcase how we support our people. We've done it well through, I believe we've done it well through our crisis, and I think our people believe we've done it well through the crisis. I guess I don't know how it is for other businesses, but we've probably placed about half of our workforce on furlough, but we never claimed any government money for it. We paid them a full salary while we did it. Anyone that had to go off through sickness of a family member or symptoms, they were paid full throughout. So we had quite a positive message to communicate to people, and we were able to do that through video or podcasts. And these were quite powerful commitments from our business, and it's been good to see the gratitude of our employees and the comments that they've posted on Interaction, because ultimately it's affecting their livelihoods and their health. So it's good to get the reassurances that we could offer them. So it's been amazing for us, and I mean, on top of that, we also had our brand as well to talk about. So there's been quite a lot to talk about on our app recently.
Great. We had one short question about the app that you use to post the videos and the managers. That was Staffbase as an app. So Staffbase as an employee communications solutions. You use this with a mobile app, and you also use this on the desktop, right? So that's both ways. I hope
I use it more on my desktop because I'm never far from my desk. So I think a lot of our people use it on the app side of it, but I use it on my desktop because it's just easier for me, because that's what I'm on. So.
Just a short check in terms of the time. I think we have time left. Cool. Perfect. Okay. Yeah. So we will also show
plenty of time left still.
At least one screen of the app in the desktop, like to give you a better idea how this looks like, just as a teaser. Before that, tell us a bit more about the feedback of employees about this and what you learned from it, Chris.
Well, I suppose I could say how, as a business, we've responded to the crisis, the pandemic, the coronavirus. We lobbied the government to be classified as key workers, because we're supporting the road, the rail, hospitals, utilities, broadband every hour of every day. But going back to a little bit of what I said before about our business is working in silos and the culture that we had before, some of our people, I don't think, recognized the full scale of what we could offer. And we saw it from our comms that went out on the app and the feedback that we got, that people were actually asking us as a business to shut down operations and to close during the pandemic because they didn't feel we were key workers. So we heard those comments, we addressed those people individually, And we also changed our tactics a little bit, because we were key workers and we were doing key work out in the industry. So we started pushing different case studies out there. So on the app, we would have a little story about how we rectified a broadband situation, how we delivered an NHS test site, and we've done those. In fact, this morning I put on another story about a test centre in South Wales. So we changed our message to try and promote to our people, look, just because you worked in a business before and just concentrated on this, we're all about this now, and this is why we're key workers. And I don't think I've seen a single negative comment in the last 6 or 7 weeks to say we're not key workers, we need to shut down. So I think, the app gave us that feedback straight away, and it gave that public feedback that we would have to respond to stuff. So I think it's been really good. So the app has just given us that platform to communicate in a better way.
Yeah.
And I think the next slide has got some examples of some of the feedback we've got, which shows exactly some of the comments that other people.
Okay, that was the slide before. Sorry.
Yeah, so I mean, if you can see on there, let's read some examples. Kev, I've been working with so many positive people just lately. It's made through this terrible time easier. Great company to work for. Just feel immensely proud to be part of the Sunbelt journey. Let's show them all we're the best. We have more to show. We will own the future of rental. Unrivaled loyalty and dedication to the company. The first steps on our new adventure. Times have been hard, but this gives us a ray of sunshine. Great message, exciting times. People, that's just like I could have put hundreds of these on, and it's great that we're getting that, and we just would not have had it before without the app.
So I believe, Chris, it's also probably a great way for you to show this off to the management and say, hey, that's your role to communicate, but also bring in this feedback and have this back in of the team, right? And I think that's something that communication never had before. Whenever you don't have this interactive channel, you just say, yeah, I sent this out, or we printed the newsletter, whatever. Because a lot of communicators that I see, they're actually scared about the feedback, what will people say and so on, right? So did you have any negative comments, or how did you deal with that? Did you have any, also pressure to let's remove that, or
No, but there has been negative comments. I can think of a few, but generally speaking, I then get in contact with whoever's responsible for that story. I'm sort of responsible for posting it, but it might be coming from another member of the team.
Okay.
I'll get in touch with them and see if they can reply direct to that person. And if they can't, I will do that for them, because it needs responding to, because that person has an issue. And again, it just shows as a business that we're listening, So.
Fantastic. Yeah. What other content do you produce for the app?
Well, pretty much everything from an announcement from Andy to a local community story. We have everything goes on there. Whether it's a new policy, a new customer agreement, so we've signed a new deal with Vinci or Balfour BT, then we push that news out to our people. And again, it just helps share the scale of the business. So people reading that, which would never have known it before. So it's just a fantastic tool. So we're always making sure we're recognizing our teammates as well. So every month we have a long service recognition. So everyone with a 5, 10, 15, 25, 30, we even had a 50-year anniversary recently on there. We put those out. And also every month the employees of the month get recognized on there. So it's good to see people getting recognized. And quite often the people stories, as everyone would probably expect, they're the ones that most people listen to and like, because it's good to recognize everyone. But we're not just doing that in the written format anymore. It's video, it's short video. We're doing podcasts, and we're always asking, I call it going fishing. We're going fishing for our audience to send in their own content, because ultimately, if they want to send it in or they want to talk about it, it's more relevant to our audience.
Did you create, let's say, different processes for your content, especially if there are 20 former businesses, right?
Yeah.
How do you distribute content creation? Is this more centralized? Is this more across these 20 businesses? Like, how do you organize that?
It's certainly, it's more centralized, and there's a process, whereas I don't think before we didn't really have a process, to be honest. It was just a case of news was communicated when we needed to. But with the app, we've introduced a full schedule. So for a week, 2-3 weeks ahead, we can see what's planned and what's going to be posted. And it's a flexible schedule, because obviously anyone that's listening, anyone that's watching will know that ad hoc requests come in, on a daily basis. But now we can work them into a schedule, and we can make sure they're not perhaps superseding or getting in the way of some important news. So I guess, for example, in the past, which one of the processes we've introduced is I just have sole control over what gets posted, whereas before there'd be several different people able to post. So we might have a key message going out from somewhere in the business about a new process or a new safety measure or whatever it might be, and that would go out, and then someone from HR might post about a job for a driver embarking, and then that would then push the important news down. And you think, well, if you could just hang off for a few hours off that post, then it allows the most important message to stay there and not get pushed down. So we've introduced that as a schedule, but a flexible schedule. And also, as part of the rebrand process, we introduced a whole new tone of voice. So we speak in plain English now, whereas in the past, a lot of comms would go out with quite a corporate slant to it or with jargon. But we now are fairly consistent in how we speak, and we always try and bring it back to our vision, mission, and values. So we have 6 values, and we always try and make sure that whatever comms goes out relates to one of those values. So it's definitely, we're having more control over what goes out, and that's by having a set process, which we didn't have before. And again, because I can't really say this enough, because everything's so visual on the app and the opportunity for feedback is there, which it wasn't before, everyone's game is upped. Everyone works a little bit harder and thinks about it a bit more. So it's that visual process of it all, which is quite fascinating, really, and quite good to see.
That's a fantastic quote. Like, everyone's games is up, right? So that's because of the feedback, so much motivation, so much more, right? I would actually love to have an example of the plain English, but you probably don't have one out of your out of the group.
So rather than we ensure to do stuff, we make sure, and everything's, rather than saying apologies, it's sorry. Rather than however, it's but. It's we're saying things how we speak, because that's our audience as well. Our audience aren't bankers. They are, we're drivers, we're fitters, we're hardworking individuals out in the field. It's not, so we perhaps not always, and we have such a range of employees as well, that we perhaps haven't tailored it to that in the past, whereas now we are, and it is a case of plain speaking. We say what we say, and we do what we do, and we get the job done.
That's what we should do a webinar about this in the future. I think that's really a fantastic topic. So there's a big trend in marketing also to go back to really easy plain language, just how you talk, write like you talk, and so on. So I think I think
it makes it more personal as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, you can, if you've written this, read this out loud, and really, would you tell this to people, or is this really written language? So that's such a difference, right?
Yeah.
And it works in marketing, and I think it's exactly the same thing. It also works for employee communications. Yeah.
I certainly see it as well now. For everyone else will probably see saying the same. When they get a letter from their bank or whoever it might be, you might read it, or if you get a letter about your mortgage or your credit card, you read it and you think that's not really very understandable. That needs improving, because from the work that we're doing on this, there's so many organizations which aren't talking to their customers in the right way. And I think that's got to change.
Yeah. And I think that's an easy way to start with, right? It doesn't cost anything. It's you can change it from one day to another. Fantastic. So what are the next steps forward? I think as part of the session, we talked about an app and intranet. Maybe from my perspective, and if we go to the next slide, this is a topic actually that a lot of other companies also deal with. So mobile communication is often the first move because it's easier and faster to implement, and it's like in many cases also kind of the burning platform because you have these people out in the field. On the other hand, as a comms team, for many it's really hard to have like several platforms channels that kind of work side by side. So there's just one trend, and that's our input here. One trend that we see on a larger scale, that these mobile channels and traditional desktop channels like intranets, they grow together, right? What we see, and that's also in terms of our from a Staffbase perspective, our core product strategy to bring these together. We actually believe that they also create kind of a new category of platforms. We call them employee experience intranets because it helps to support an employee experience across all touch points and also like people on the field and so on, not just sitting at a desk, right? Is this kind of the same? And I understand it's kind of the same discussions that you have, Chris?
It is, yeah. I mean, as a team in the marketing, our objective is to get 90% of our people on the app, so we can actually have a single source of truth which communicates to them. Because we have such a diverse and remote workforce, I think only about half of them actually have an email address. And most of them are out on the road, so they don't have access to a terminal computer. So actually communicating with them is really difficult. But everyone has a mobile phone, whether it's personal or not. So the app should allow us to communicate with them more. But, you know, they need certain things in their role to get their job done. And a lot of those things are housed on our intranet system. So I have this vision that we will be able to merge these two systems. So people will have to have the app. So the stuff that they would need from the internet becomes available via the app. And therefore it drives more users, and it gives us that single source of truth for when we want to communicate with our people, rather than having to put it out on 2 or 3 different channels. So once you start using the app and you see how good it is, and you see the potential, it seems almost crazy that you have an intranet and an app. It should almost be one. And I have this kind of hope that we can move the intranet onto the app, and then also from a marketing point of view, that'll give us greater control of what goes out. Whereas at the moment, the intranet is kind of IT-led, operational-led, which is fine. You know, it has all the information on it, but I don't think it gives the user the greatest engagement, the greatest experience. And as I said before, it is kind of clunky and outdated, whereas on the app, it's just that easy to use. It's touchscreen, it's fantastic. I think that will engage with people better.
Fantastic. Yeah, that's what we hear a lot across the board, right? Especially like this, the single source of truth, as you said. Have this, and also have a sort of more freedom and independence for the comms team to really have this one platform to deliver their full message, right? So that's definitely a great point. Whoever is interested actually to have a deep dive on the platform itself, we are happy from Staffbase side to support this. So just reach out to us here after the session, or go to staffbase.com, and you can have requested a demo, and that's a pretty easy, free and really quick process to understand and have a look at the live platform. And I think that's maybe also kind of the message from our side. Chris, you and your business, typically you're not in a position like to build this up by yourself, or to like develop this by yourself. So that's why we specialized in pretty much creating a platform that's ready to use, right? You still have to bring in the content, and you have to think about your communication and the way that you did also kind of change the approach. But it's our goal is that communicators shouldn't worry about the platform. Perfect. So do we have questions? Any more questions?
There was one question throughout from Sol. I don't know if Sol's still there and wants to jump on to the stage at all, but if you are, you can request to have your audio and camera on. So we do have about 10 minutes to answer any questions we have. But so I will just read out the question he asked. It says, sorry, late arrival. What platform did you use to post the videos with your managers? Was it SharePoint? You mentioned that you could measure it and receive immediate feedback. That's ideal.
They all go straight onto the app. So they're uploaded as part of the post. So they're hosted via Staffbase. So it's on there, which, we have at my business, we've got very strict IT regulations. So anything you want to post elsewhere becomes a bit of a challenge for me. So having the opportunity or the ability to post it direct in the app is priceless. It saves me so much time. So it's just that easy. You upload the story, you upload the video to the story. And as soon as it's live, you can start seeing the stats of how many people have viewed the story, how long they've been on it for. And then, if you wanted to, you could link it to a YouTube channel or something else instead and see how many views you get that way. But it's just so much easier to do it via the app. Hope that's okay.
Perfect. Yeah.
Amazing. I think that's it for questions, unless anyone has any other last minute questions they want to pop in. But I mean, for timing wise, Sol says thanks. Thumbs up, no worries. I think that, that was the questions done, and for timing we're pretty much bang on time. So I think on that we will conclude for today. Obviously, thank you everyone that did come in and out through our session. As I said at the start, if you weren't here at the start, if you did want to go rewatch any of it, you can. It will be on the GEE YouTube channel. And obviously, as Frank said earlier, we do, obviously you can go to our website, but if you want to know any more as well, Dimitri is going to be in our virtual booth. So you can go over there and meet him, and he'll be able to also kind of run through a very, very quick demo with you, show you the platform on a deeper level. Otherwise, please register your interest on the virtual booth as well, and we can get someone to get in contact with you. But massive thank you to Chris and Frank for joining us today. I thought that was really, really interesting, really informative. And I'm sure there'll be another webinar in the future.
Thanks, Joe.
You're welcome. And don't forget to press the like button, Chris and Frank. Bye, everyone. Thank you.